So it has a 35mm sensor and an EF mount? Yeah, dude, and it shoots 6K raw. How tight is that? Who asked for 6K anyways? I can barely afford hard drives as it is. Why am I getting the feeling you don't care about this? I mean, I guess it's cool as long as it's only $1,200. Oh, well, it costs $2,500. What? Okay, so maybe that was a little dramatic, but I'm gonna get into that in this video. We're gonna talk about the Pocket 6K versus the Pocket 4K and kind of the benefits of why you would actually buy the Pocket 6K or why you should not upgrade at all. But if you wanna see how I shot and lit the opening scene, you're gonna wanna stick around to the second half of the video because I'm gonna break down how I did that. Now I'm gonna be honest, this video might be a little biased. So I currently have the Pocket 4K and I've been using it for quite a long time, basically since it came out. And I really enjoyed this camera. But when the Pocket 6K came out, I was pretty excited and I immediately put in an order to at least test it out and see what it's like. And if I wasn't gonna like it, I would send it back. But it went on back order really fast and they told me I was gonna have to wait like 6 or 7 weeks for it. And the longer and longer I was waiting, the more and more I started thinking about, do I really need this camera? I mean, if anything, I really wanted to get the camera and still show you guys what it's capable of, because I know a lot of you guys are in the market for that camera. But the more and more I started thinking about it, I was just like, why would you get this camera? What is the point of the Pocket 6K? I think, you know, when Blackmagic said in their keynote, they said they were trying to find the middle ground between the Ursa Mini Pro and then the Pocket, and they used to have the Cinema 2.5K or whatever, the 4K, and it had an EF mount. It was priced more around that $2,500 price point, and they wanted to bridge that gap and put another camera in that slot. I get the intentionality behind that, but there's a lot of things I really like about the Pocket 4K that they kind of took away from the Pocket 6K. So the Pocket 6K has a super 35mm sensor and it shoots 6K in B-RAW, and that's pretty awesome. And then it has an EF mount, which is one of the standard mounts that most people use on their cameras. And there's a lot of available EF lenses on the market, so it made sense to put an EF mount on this camera, given that it had a super 35mm sensor. But because the Pocket 4K only has a micro four thirds sensor, you're going to want to use a focal reducer or Metabones or whatever to help get that frame size bigger and get it closer to a super 35mm sensor, so you can get a little bit more out of your lenses that you're using. And most likely you're going to buy an EF adapter to put on the micro four thirds sensor. So in turn, you're kind of getting the same thing with the Pocket 6K. You're getting an EF mount and a super 35mm size sensor, but a frame size that it's practically the same. But then, you know, that makes you think a little bit. You know, the EF mount is good and all, but if you look at high-end cameras, they always have like a PL mount, or they have the option to change out the mount, which gives you more flexibility when it comes to lenses. You know, the EF mount is popular, but there's also a lot of vintage lenses and other lenses, maybe Sony E-mount or whatever, that you might have already owned or you want to use. I mean, it's not like the end of the world. You can definitely adapt lenses to this camera, but it's a lot easier with the micro four thirds system, because you can get a Metabone speed booster in like every flavor of lens imaginable, all the way back to like Canon FDs, like the ones I shoot on a lot. You can actually get the 1980s Canon FD mount. So the Pocket 4K is a little bit less limiting when it comes to that. The fact that you can basically put any lens on it was a plus for me. So the Blackmagic Pocket 4K was $1,200, and it had some shortcomings, but the workarounds weren't a big deal because the camera only cost $1,200. But the Pocket 6K costs $2,500, and you're really not getting that much more. Of course, you're getting 6K, but I don't know if you know, but I mostly shoot in like 2K and 1080 on this channel. I don't really care about 4K that much. I mean, it's always nice to have the extra frame size to move around, and a little bit extra sharpness. But at the end of the day, there's still not that big of a reason to have 4K, and now we're already jumping into the 6K territory. And yes, it's beneficial. You get that extra resolution, you get the extra sharpness, you can move things around in post, and that is a plus. I'm not saying it's not. So the Pocket 6K is like effectively like a 1.56 crop, which is pretty good. That's getting a lot closer to like an Alexa or an Ursa Mini that I'm shooting on here right now. Those are both around a 1.4 crop compared to a full frame sensor. So there really shouldn't be that many complaints. But as of right now, everyone's on the race to release full frame cameras with high data rates and high dynamic range. So this is kind of weird timing to release the Pocket 6K. I was really expecting Blackmagic to release a full frame camera, and instead they just gave you this kind of thing in between. So recently, Metabones released a new speed booster for the Pocket 4K. It comes with new mount options. You can get a PL mount, an EF mount. There's a lot of different flavors, and it was designed specifically for the Pocket 4K sensor. They actually made the focal reducer glass get even closer to the sensor of the Pocket 4K, which should give you better quality from the reducer, which is the only issue that I really have with focal reducers, is that you're putting extra glass in between the lens and the sensor. But I've never really had any issues with that. Yeah, it could be a little softer maybe, but normally you're getting more light, and it's the Pocket 4K shoots at an ISO of 400, but when you add that extra stop of light, it's kind of like you're shooting at ISO 800. So there's just a lot of benefits of the focal reducer, and I've always liked to use them. And I recently ordered it just so I could play with it to see what it's like, to kind of test it out. I have a 0.64 XL edition rather than getting the 0.71 like I've been using in the past. Sorry, someone next door is watching a movie really loud and the bass is rattling through the apartment. And so that 0.64 XL gives you a really big frame size on the Pocket 4K. So if the Pocket 6K is at a 1.56 or whatever the crop is in 16:9, this gives the Pocket 4K closer to a 1.29, 1.3 crop. So we're getting closer and closer to that full frame look with just an adapter. And so the adapter is $600 or $700, and then you put that in with a $1,200 Pocket 4K, you're still under $2,000. And you're getting a bigger frame size, you're still getting 4K, you're still getting B-RAW, you're getting the exact same body, the same batteries, it's all the same. The only thing you don't get is the 6K resolution that, honestly, I don't really care about. Now, I have seen other people test the Pocket 6K online, and it does seem to have a little bit of a different noise pattern to it that might be a little bit more pleasant. And then on the spec sheet, it has like a half a stop and more dynamic range, and I'm sure that would be hard to notice really in impractical environments, but that's there too. So I suppose for some people there would be some benefits to the Pocket 6K, but for me right now, I'm not gonna stress it. I'm gonna keep up doing this channel, I'm gonna keep shooting on my Ursa Mini and my Pocket 4K, and I don't think that I'm gonna be trying to get a Pocket 6K in my hand anytime soon. And obviously this goes back to my obsession with the full frame look. And really I'm on the hunt for a full frame camera, not a super 35mm camera, and especially one that's not crutched into a super 35mm sensor with an EF mount that I can't adapt to make the sensor look bigger practically with the lenses that I have. Also something to know, if you will go back and watch my Ursa Mini 4.6K versus Pocket 4K comparison, I talk a lot about how I got the Ursa Mini for only $3,000 online. Now the Ursa Mini 4.6K is like a complete package. It does the audio, it has a really nice flip out screen, it has a super 35mm sensor, which is bigger than the Pocket 6K, might I add. It has the EF mount, it has all these things built into it, and I got mine used for $3,000. So why would you get the Pocket 6K other than wanting 6K in B-RAW? I don't see why you would get that over this camera that is a much more production-ready camera with a lot more dynamic range. I mean, I get from Blackmagic's standpoint, they wanted to release a new camera to fill that void, but to me, I think just getting the used Ursa Mini 4.6K would be a better option than getting the new Pocket 6K. Now, if I do get a chance to get the Pocket 6K in, I will definitely do a video over that because I know a lot of people still want to see that, but I just wanted to kind of give my opinions on this and tell you why I haven't done a video yet. I mean, I was waiting on the camera, but I really am not stressing to get that camera in yet and test it out. It doesn't seem that exciting to me. I test out other cameras like the Canon EOS R and the Nikon Z6, and they're crippled in a lot of ways too, but they have that full frame look, and I'm kind of obsessed with that. So I'd rather play with those cameras than even play with the Pocket 6K at this point. I mean, let me know what you think in the comments below. Maybe I'm getting a little out of hand with this right now, but I'm sure there's a reason that a lot of you still want it. Just let me know below in the comments, and I'll do my best to get the camera in soon. Okay, now for the breakdown. What'd you think about that opening scene? I mean, I thought it was a really good way of exercising my filmmaking skills. It's always fun to write a script and get find the motivations of two characters and then write out a little storyline and then try to find the shots that best tell the story. Kind of block out the characters in my room, which is both the characters were me, which was kind of difficult, but it was a good exercise too from a lighting perspective and continuity. And I think I'm gonna start doing this a lot more on the channel. Definitely let me know if you like them and I will definitely try to keep them up. And of course, I'll be doing some more recreations in the future too. So the first shot was pretty simple. I basically just took the Pocket 4K and put it inside my refrigerator, and I just used the natural little light that was in the refrigerator, and then I just dubbed over my voice to make it sound like I was saying those words when I open and close the refrigerator. So that's a 35mm sensor and an EF mount? Now I had the new speed booster on the Pocket 4K. I had it at like 18mm on the Sigma 18-35. And then I, of course, for all these shots, I use my Tiffin Black Pro Mist, the quarter Pro Mist. I use it a lot on this channel. There was a little bit of vignetting at 18mm on the Sigma 18-35 with the XL speed booster, and that's because that lens was designed for an APS-C sensor, which is basically a 1.6, 1.7x sensor, and this new speed booster gives me a 1.3 crop, so I went a lot wider than this lens was designed for. But that's okay because I was using the 240 cinematic letterbox for this video. I was able to push it a little bit and crop out that vignette. So the next shot is when I started actually lighting. So I kept all the blinds up in my loft for this. I wanted to have full control of the light, and I knew that it was gonna be changing throughout the day. Plus I think it has a really nice look with the little squares and stuff in the background. So of course I broke out my Aperture 120D. I always start with that basically as my key light, or sometimes I use a 300D if I need more power. But for this, with the blinds closed, I just needed the 120D. I knew I wanted to act as a key, and I knew I wanted to shoot on the shadow side of the face and put the light on the other side. But I didn't want it spilling all over the background because I didn't want it to look fake. You know, when you put up a light like this and you change the direction of light, people can quickly notice that you put a light there. I put it up pretty high and made it be motivated by the windows, obviously, in my loft. But then I wanted to make sure I didn't get it on the background, so I threw up a 5-in-1 reflector on a stand, and I put it around the side of the Aperture 120D to block it from hitting the wall. This really helps make the light look natural, but still gives shape and control to the scene. And so for the other shot that was in the kitchen on Spencer number 1, that's how I wrote it in the script, I just moved the Aperture 120D around just a little bit to give it a little more wrap on my face. I still kept the 5-in-1 up to keep it off the background. I basically just tweaked it ever so slightly to make sure that the background exposure was good and my face was still nice and lit. And I brought the Aperture 120D a little bit closer to my face to make it a little bit more soft. And I probably turned it down a little bit too to make sure that it was all even, like the shot before it. And then to light the shots for Spencer number 2, the Spencer that's sitting over by the window advocating for the Pocket 6K, I put that 120D on the opposite end of the table, and then I basically pointed it at my face, but then I turned it away until it was basically pointing out the window. So it's kind of half pointing out the window and half pointing at my face. And what that did was kind of made the light just kind of bleed onto my face. The windows weren't giving me enough wrap, so that's why I put that light up there to begin with, and to add a little bit more punch to my face. I also took a 5-in-1 reflector again and put it on the white wall over here to make sure that not too much light was bouncing off the wall onto my back. I like to have a lot of shape and richness to my image, and you need to take away light from the areas that you don't want the light to bounce off of. And the only thing I changed for the close-up was I added an ND filter, because when I got in there closer, I wanted to kind of open up the lens a little bit and give a real nice shallow depth of field, and the sun was just kind of blasting through the window, so I had to put on an ND filter for that. But I still kept on my Pro Mist, and I still kept the Sigma 18-35 the whole time. And so something I forgot to mention is that when I'm shooting narrative stuff like this, I'm going to do a crop, I usually like to shoot with a 35mm lens. So I had the 18-35mm Sigma lens, but I mostly had it at 35 for this entire scene. But the trick is just to make sure that you have control of your own light and make sure that you're controlling light that's spilling all over the room. You've heard me say this before in my other videos. Definitely go check out my lighting formula video if you haven't seen that. That'll help you understand a little bit more about how I light things. And then Spencer number 1 starts to move to the couch. So when I went to do that shot, I once again just used the Aperture 120D. I pulled it around. I didn't want it to look too bright because we're getting farther and farther away from the window, and so I wanted to sell that the light was kind of falling off a little bit and getting a little bit darker in the room. But I did want to show that the TV was on when I sat down. So what I did is I put the Aperture 120D basically by the TV, but still giving it a little bit of shape by moving it a little off center from the TV. And then I used the Aperture 120D's TV effect. It kind of gives you little pulses of light at different intensities to make it look like there's a TV in front of you. And I brought it down a little bit lower, closer to the TV eye line, and that acted as a little bit of fill, but also acted as that kind of TV glowing effect. Now, of course, I had all the other lights off in the room to make sure I didn't have any light spilling around the room or affecting any of my shots. And then for the last shot, I had to do something a little tricky. I had to shoot the shot twice, but keeping the focus the same so I could be out of focus in the background. And then I had to take it into the computer and do some kind of fancy masking and rotoscoping to make sure that I could cut myself out and combine the two shots together. So it looks like both of my characters are in the same shot, but really it's two shots combined. Well, that's all I've got for today. If you like the video, give me a thumbs up. If you love the video, subscribe to my channel. I'm gonna do a lot more stuff like this in the future. If you haven't watched my last video, my Joker recreations, I highly recommend that. I do a lot of movie recreations on this channel, and I kind of show you how I break down and light these shots, and it's something that's really fun, and I think that you'll really enjoy that. Well, if you have any more questions about how I lit the opening scene, or if you wanna hear more about the Pocket 6K or my thoughts on it, or you wanna argue with me in the comments, feel free to do that. Until next time, guys, see ya.